Stasi ducade Shavedia tarsa sasline Gesa bister de calipeane Romani aswatena bistre
Lungo no drome sa ciuru ripira Caucalo mormento ludятова Без хаси паків на найлен Нума амен сате на бістрен Кана аврила о краю чижана
И надежда нила на тиха сара на весна Карим ти пирал де лакаси уруке На бистер алендar на бистер
Это когда не Кирилл будет?
Tu me întrebăm te știu piano mai zurales?
Да, бой такой чай не еще не успел.
They would need if it's possible the piano.
Лендер нормально еще не успел. На меди такой чай не еще не успел. Само пиано.
Можно голосу комастишь нас. Где ж нас робила бас?
На другую.
На Бустер.
На муку не делал.
Szanowni Państwo, już wkrótce rozpoczniemy obchody Europejskiego Dnia Pamięci o Holokauście Romów i Sinti. Proszę Państwa o wyłączenie telefonów komórkowych. Całość wydarzenia tłumaczona jest symultanicznie na 4 języki. Język polski na kanale 1, język angielski na kanale 2, język niemiecki na kanale 3 i język romski na kanale 4. Sehr geehrte Damen und Herren, wir werden in Kürze die Gedenkfeier vom European Holocaust Gedenktag für Sinti und Roma beginnen. Bitte schalten Sie Ihre Mobiltelefone aus. Die gesamte Veranstaltung wird simultan in 4 Sprachen übersetzt. Polnisch auf Kanal 1, Englisch auf Kanal 2, Deutsch auf Kanal 3 und Romani auf Kanal 4. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to start the commemoration of the European Holocaust Memorial Day for Sinti and Roma. Please turn off your mobile phones. The event will be interpreted simultaneously into 4 languages. Polish on Channel 1, English on Channel 2, German on Channel 3, and Romani on Channel 4. Witam Państwa w tym szczególnym miejscu
Welcome
na
to this
terenie obozu
special
rumańskiego
place
KL Auschwitz-Birkenau.
in KL Auschwitz-Birkenau, the site of Second Lager, on this special day, August the 2nd, on the 80th anniversary of liquidation. My name is Piotr Slavolski. It will be my honor to lead you through this main part of the international commemoration of the European Roman Sinti Holocaust Remembrance Day. It is organized exactly at the site of Second Lager on the 80th anniversary. Dardo Balke Ensembles opened this meeting with Novodira to the 3 days of March. It refers to the events that took place from the 8th to the 10th of March 1943, when Sinti and Roma from the northwest Germany were held for 3 days in an old slaughterhouse in Bremen. They were being arrested and deported throughout the Reich under the so-called Auschwitz Decree of December the 16th, 1942. We are gathered here to pay tribute to those who were murdered and to the witnesses of the crimes committed, those who survived the tragedy that happened 80 years ago and who are here with us today. We are here also so that the crimes are not forgotten, so that the memory can live on as a warning for future generations. On behalf of the organizers of the European Holocaust Memorial Day of Roman Sinti, the Central Council of the German Sinti and Roma, and the Auschwitz-Birkenau Memorial Museum of the Roma Association in Poland, I would like to extend a warm welcome to the former prisoners of Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp and other German Nazi camps and ghettos, as well as the Holocaust survivors and their families and loved ones. We have with us Ms. Alma Klasing, Mr. Bolesław Rumanowski, Lutz ghetto prisoner, Mr. Christian Pfeiffer, and Marian Turski. May I welcome the presidents and the chairpersons of national parliaments and all national delegations, Marshal of the Polish Senate, Małgorzata, Kidawa-Błońska,
President of the Bundestag of Germany, Ms. Manuela Schwasig, and Federal Government Commissioner for Culture and the Media of Germany, Ms. Claudia Roth. We want to welcome the large delegation of parliamentarians from all levels from around Europe. It is the first time that the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe has set up an ad hoc committee of the Bureau to participate in the European Holocaust Memorial Day for Roma and Sinti under the leadership of its president. Following a historical resolution of the German Bundestag in December 2023, and with the invitation from the Federal Commissioner Against Anti-Gypsyism and for the Life of Sinti and Roma in Germany, Dr. Mehmet Daimagula, a large delegation of Bundestag members are here today. President of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, Mr. Theodoros Rousopoulos, Pani Dorota Niedziela, wicemarszałkini Sejmu Rzeczypospolitej Polskiej, Deputy Speaker of the Lithuanian Seimas Parliament and representative of the Lithuanian Presidency of the Committee of Ministers of the Council of Europe, Dr. Žygismantas Pavilionis, Mr. Marinko Kavara, Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives of the Parliamentary Assembly of Bosnia and Herzegovina, Mr. Dani Dayan, Chairman of the Yad Vashem, the World Holocaust Remembrance Center, the Right Honourable Lord Eric Pickles, Chair of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, UK Presidency, and Ms. Thea Jelashvili, First Deputy Director of the OSCE Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights. Witam.
I would like to bid warm welcome to the members of the Polish, German, European and World Governments. Warm welcome to Mr. Tomasz Szymański, who is the Secretary of State within the Ministry of the Interior. Warm welcome to Władysław Teofil Bertoszewski, Secretary of State within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Suleiman Ashmani, Deputy Minister for Culture of the Republic of Kosovo. Witam reprezentantów.
I would like to welcome the representative of diplomatic services, the ambassador of Austria to Poland, Andras Stadler, ambassador of Israel to Poland, Jakov Livne, ambassador of the Turkish Republic to Poland, Rauf Alpa Denktaş, deputy head of the mission of the Swedish embassy, Anna Ugel. I would also like to bid warm welcome to numerous General Counsel and Charge d'Affaires. Let me bid warm welcome to the representatives of the national governments for Roma and Sinti and combat against anti-Gypsyism. I'd like to bid warm welcome to the representatives of the regional and local governments, Mr. Ryszard Śmiałek, the deputy voivode of the Małopolska region, Iwona Gibas, member of the board of the Małopolska region, Andrzej Skrzypiński from Oświęcim, Janusz Hierut, the mayor of the city of Oświęcim, and Halina Musiał. I would like to bid warm welcome to the representatives of churches and religious communities, including the Jewish community, but first and foremost, the Roma community. Warm welcome to the representatives of all the institutions and organizations and all the guests and visitors who've come to join us here today. May I now ask the organizer of the European Holocaust Memorial of Roma and Sinti to take the floor. We have had the pleasure of cooperating with Roman Kwiatkowski, the chairman of the Association of Roma Poland, and Mr. Romani Rosa, who's the head of the Central Council of German Sinti in Roma. So over to Mr. Roman Kwiatkowski, who will be the first to take the floor.
Szanowni Państwo,
ladies and gentlemen, today we stand here to commemorate those who perished in the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp 80 years ago. The so-called Zigeunerlager, the Roma camp, where thousands of our compatriots lost their lives as a result of ruthless hatred. So we are in a place that has been marked forever by suffering, pain, and death. We remember those who were murdered here, but we also remember about those who survived, bearing lifelong scars, not just on their bodies, but also on their souls. Ladies and gentlemen, Auschwitz-Birkenau is a symbol of the largest crime against humanity in history, committed by the Nazis against 500,000 Roma and Sinti who were murdered here. The liquidation of the so-called Roma camp did not actually mean the end of extermination for us, as we continued to be murdered. We were there to make room for our Jewish fellow brothers in misery, who, just like us, were doomed to annihilation. During the Second World War, the Roma and Jews united in this tragic community of suffering, becoming victims of the same genocide regime. And this strengthened the bond of solidarity between our peoples. The Holocaust of the Roma and Sinti is still far too little heard of and too rarely discussed in the context of the Second World War history. Yet, it is our collective responsibility to ensure that this tragedy is remembered and is never forgotten. We must constantly remind others of what happened here, so that the future generations can learn from our mistakes, can learn from the mistakes of the past, and never allow similar crimes to happen in the future. We remember. We remember that struggle for dignity and rights of our people never ended with the end of the Second World War. Our community still faces discrimination, exclusion, and prejudice. We are still denied the right to be treated as citizens of our countries enjoying full rights. Anti-Gypsyism is still omnipresent, even though it's not always reduced just to verbal attacks. Quite often it comes with physical attacks. Anti-Gypsyism is embedded on stereotype, superstitions, treating us as those of inferior value, marked with negative traits. This attitude never allows for any dialogue. It pushes us to the margin of life. It makes the Roma people not considered as fellow citizens or partners, but as a community of special concern. Now, we do not want special treatment. We don't want any imposed integration. We do not need a dedicated assistance program. What we want is the programs to enable us to maintain our cultural identity and to fight discrimination against our community. We only want our rights to be respected. We want our responsibilities to be observed. For ages, we've been integral members of the societies. We only differ in origin, culture, customs, and traditions. Well, in the recent years, the European Union has stepped up efforts to combat anti-Gypsyism. However, in recent years, we have seen that these efforts are still insufficient. There is still a long way to go for the Roma population to be treated as full subject and agents, as equal fellow citizens. We are not only Roma, but we are also citizens of individual European member states and countries. This is especially visible across our eastern border, where brutal war has been going on for more than 2 years. Many young Roma fight shoulder to shoulder, hand in hand with their Ukrainian compatriots to defend their homeland. They show dedication, often sacrificing their life in the name of patriotism and the love of freedom. Our compatriots never refuse to fight because they are full-fledged Ukrainian citizens. They love their homeland and they know it is their duty to defend it. Well, the same was true also during the Second World War, when the Roma fought. The Roma and Sinti fought on all fronts, often demonstrating great sacrifice, dedication and heroism. The only way to combat anti-Gypsyism is education. Now, to that end, I'd like to inform you, and I do it with great joy, that the resolution of the Regional Assembly of the Małopolska region, dated the 28th of December 2023, established the Center for Roma History and Culture in Oświęcim. And it actually started its operation on the 1st of February 2024. The center is not only a place of education and remembrance, but it is also a platform for dialogue and cooperation to sustain Romani cultural identity. Now, establishment of this unique and historic institution would never have been possible without the involvement of the board of the region. And today, I'm very happy to announce that we have Madam Iwona Gibas, a board member, present with us, and I'd like to use this opportunity to thank for her commitment. Now, there is this famous quote of Nelson Mandela, who said, "It always seems impossible until it is done." These words remind us that even the most difficult goals, such as combat against anti-Gypsyism, are actually achievable if we unite in our efforts. I strongly believe that through education and culture, we can combat anti-Gypsyism and build bridges between different communities. So in conclusion, let me say that the feelings experienced by the Roma and Sinti people in Europe with such large step up in anti-Gypsyism emotions are so difficult for us to bear. I know what it means to be discriminated against. I know because I lost my family here. But it is so much different and difficult to understand for the young people. I know what it feels like because it is here in the city of Oświęcim that I survived pogrom. I was deprived of my Polish citizenship. I was offered a one-way ticket and asked never to return. I realized that I became a stateless person. I never agreed to that. I demanded my rights to be observed. I wanted to be back here, and this took a while, actually, until the martial law was over, and then I was offered a special council passport. So I came back here. I started a family. My children were born here. This is where they were educated, and they continue to attend the best universities, both in Poland and abroad. So this is where we see our future flourish, and this is where I see my grandchildren's future.
Na zakończenie chciałbym...
So just to conclude, let me reiterate that memory of the past and struggle for the future are inseparable. We must remember the tragedy that occurred 8 years ago in order to build a better future for all of us. Only through remembrance and education can we build a world in which all the people, regardless of their background, will be treated with respect and dignity. Thank you so very much for your presence. Thank you for commitment to this important cause. Together, we can ensure that such tragedies never happen again, never again. Please let us now honor the memory of the victims with a minute of silence. Thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much.
I now have the honor to request an address from the chairman of the Central Council of German, Sinti and Roma, Mr. Romani Rosa.
Sehr geehrte Frau Bundestagspräsidentin Baas,
Madam President of Bundesrat, Claudia Roth. May I welcome the representatives of national parliaments, the Bundestag that are present with us, the representatives of churches. Also, I'm really happy to see that we have with us Mr. Marian Turski. Sir, thank you for your very important speech. Diane, the director of this memorial, welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, today we commemorate 4,300 Sinti and Roma who were murdered in Auschwitz on the night on the 2nd of August, exactly 80 years ago to the day. At the time, they were the last members of our minority in this extermination camp, who, despite their fierce resistance, were driven into the gas chambers by the SS. In 2015, the European Parliament declared August the 2nd as the European Holocaust Remembrance Day for Sinti and Roma. Places such as Auschwitz, Majdanek, Treblinka, Jasenovac, Bergen-Belsen, Buchenwald, and Dachau, and others have become the largest cemeteries for our minority in Europe. Auschwitz stands as a symbol of the Holocaust committed by the Nazis against 500,000 Sinti and Roma and 6 million Jews, ranging from infants to the elderly, and all based on the origins. Among us, among Sinti and Roma, there is virtually no family that doesn't associate with Auschwitz with the murder of their relatives. Remembering the Holocaust is not about a transfer of guilt to today's generations, but it does mean taking responsibility for democracy and the rule of law. The criminal war of aggression waged by the Nazis reduced Europe to rubble and tore our entire continent, led it into the abyss. This year's European Parliament election results show once again very clearly that Europe is in a worrying crisis. You see, nationalism, it offers simple solutions to people. We know from historical experience that minorities are always made scapegoats. We were appalled by the secret conference of the extreme right that took place in Germany last year in November. There, the deportation of over 1 million people was discussed, including people with German passports. And these fantasies remind millions of peoples in Europe of this ideology pursued by the Nazis, who made membership in their nation-state dependent on soil and on blood. The idea of this renaissance of the national state shows how ruthless these nationalists are. They continue to cling to their inhuman racism, and in this way they oppose our peaceful coexistence both in Germany and in Europe. Ladies and gentlemen, the Nazis murdered millions of people, and it left a legacy. Namely, the international community must confront every criminal ideology at as early a stage as possible. This is why I'd like to conclude my speech here by quoting the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights of December 1948, and here I'm going to quote: "All human beings are born free and equal in terms of their dignity and their rights." This experience, this bitter experience of Nazi rules, obliges us to defend this dignity and these rights everywhere and for everyone. We know that thousands of people drown in the Mediterranean Sea every year. We know that thousands are abandoned in the deserts of Tunisia and Libya. We know that no country can solve such problems of war, hunger and environmental disasters going it alone. We appeal to politicians to focus their actions, their efforts on humanity's survival so that humanity can survive in peace. Pope Francis visited the island of Lampedusa. It happened in July 2013 during the refugee crisis. When he was there, he said, let me quote, "The globalization of indifference has taken away our ability to weep," end of quote. The legacy of the victims of Auschwitz forbids us to accept this indifference. Now, I'm going to finish soon, but from this place let me thank Director Tsiviński, because he has been supporting us for years on this day. Let me also mention another person today. There is this history of neglect also in the police, and this person has laid it bare a number of times. He represents the Federal Criminal Office. Mr. Radmacher is another person that I would like to mention. Gentlemen, thank you very much from this place. Thank you for studying the history of the police back then and still today. It deserves our utmost respect. What we must do is to defend our democracy, the rule of law. We must not rely on swift solutions because human dignity is inalienable. Thank you very much. Thank you to all of you, because today you are paying tribute to the victims that belong to our minority. And thank you to those who commit to this commemoration effort.
Deodoi beshel mropirano Ede beshel gondoline Te premande po Bister Kataruska balval purde Mropirano ushman mukel Ede mukel paribna Ani penjas Ach devle O tu calo ciricloro ed eligia mangemro li loro ed eligia mraromniake hoi sompandlo Auschwitz-a aten Auschwitz-a te bare boka te zotecha lamenane Ani oda kotormaro e blocaris bibachta alon Sacodive samen marel, de andre buti amen tradel. Te cascamel mukel kere, penelake, paslufte hele.
Open the stage to the survivors of the Holocaust. I have the privilege to welcome Ms. Alma Klasing.
Meine sehr geehrten Damen und Herren, es ist für mich eine große Ehre, dass ich heute...
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor for me to be here on the European Holocaust Memorial Day for Sinti and Roma. I am very glad that I can address you as one of the survivors and to tell you the story of my family. At the same time, it is highly distressing for me to be in this very place where so much suffering was inflicted on our minority. Well, especially since I have never given a public speech before. For this very reason, well, I'm actually not speaking myself, but it will be Fatima Steep, a young Romani woman who's going to read the words that I would like to say to you. But we stand here together in order to strengthen the bond between the generation of survivors and the generation of those who were born afterwards.
Geboren wurde ich 1937.
I was born Alma Strauss in Deburg, Hessen, in 1937. The outbreak of the Second World War tore our family apart at an early stage. My father, Bruno Strauss, was drafted into Wehrmacht in 1939. My mother, who was also called Alma, managed to stay with me and my younger brother Gottfried with an uncle who ran a traveling circus. My parents had previously run a puppet theater, and our family often traveled together to entertain audiences in many different places. So we already knew each other quite well. It was simply nice for us, for the children, to get to play together. We didn't exactly understand everything that was going on around us, but we could sense that the general mood was gradually deteriorating. First, we found out that my father's siblings had been deported to the Auschwitz-Birkenau extermination camp. Then my mother received the news that she had to report to the town hall of the town we were just passing through. At noon the next day, she reported there, and she said, well, they want to get us too. That's what she said. However, it never happened, because early in the morning, 2 men in black leather coats knocked on our door and asked, where's the boss? And although my brother and myself, we started crying out of fear, my mother was calm enough to reply, well, the boss is at war, fighting for the German fatherland. So those 2 left without accomplishing anything, but it was so very clear for our family that the danger of deportation was increasing. That's why we quickly packed up our belongings and we ran to the forest to hide. This may sound like an adventure, especially for the children whom we were, but it wasn't an adventure. We feared for our lives every minute. There was a group of about 10 people, including my grandfather, who's blind. Actually, he fought at the front of the First World War when he lost his sight. So from then on, he had to live with us in these horrible inhuman conditions in the forest of Baden-Württemberg. Over the day, we cowered in pits and we used to cover ourselves with leaves to hide. At night, we moved on to look for somewhere else to hide. And all of this had to be done as quietly as possible, always in fear of being discovered and deported to the extermination or concentration camps. We fed ourselves on berries and other edible plants. I can't really remember getting any help anywhere. I can't remember any snacks offered to us, or perhaps even a short stay in a barn. No, nothing like that comes to my mind. But with God's help, we survived. And my father returned to us safe and sound after 6 years in the army. It was so very fortunate that all our close family members survived the camps. But sadly, we also had to mourn a number of victims of Nazi racial policy among our relatives and friends. After liberation that came from the Americans, we hoped that our lives would finally change for the better. We quickly moved around again with my uncle's traveling circus until this terrible accident that remains engraved in my heart to this day. My brother Gottfried, a talented little artist, only 7 years old, was playing out with his friend shortly before the performance was just to start, when suddenly we heard a loud explosion and shouts. We immediately ran out, and quickly did we realize that 2 poor boys had found a hand grenade, and my brother had pulled out the pin. He never survived, and my parents never joined the traveling circus again. Later on, as Sinti in Germany, we also had to endure a lot of humiliation. It wasn't just me who suffered at school, but also my 3 sons. After I had them when I got married. We were all hardworking and we tried to build an existence for ourselves, but we were still excluded. And these experiences shaped our later life, and so did the Nazi era. However, due to the commitment and struggle for the civil rights movement, we were finally granted a small compensation, and discrimination was no longer our daily experience. However, we see it starting all over again. The right-wing parties that reach electoral success in Germany and in many European countries, as well as very violent behavior of neo-Nazis, scare me a lot. And That is why I would like to warn, especially young people, about these false prophets and plead with all my heart, defend our democracy, protect us, minorities, against anti-Semitism, anti-Gypsyism and racism. Thank you.
Dziękuję Państwu bardzo serdecznie.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for this standing ovation. May I ask a Holocaust survivor to take the floor, Mr. Bolesław Rumanowski. Sir?
Szanowni Państwo,
ladies and gentlemen, dear all gathered here, I am here with you at this special place on this special day, a unique day. It is August the 2nd. 80 years ago, the Roma camp was liquidated right here. And I will share with you my memories and my reflections linked to those events. I was born in 1932 in Irpin, in the region of Kujawy, to a Roma family. My parents led a nomadic lifestyle. They traveled across Poland. It was a simple life, but it was a life full of freedom that was brutally interrupted by the war. And we feared. We had to flee from repressions, seek shelter. We would seek shelter in forests near Łódź, just off Chowa in Kielce. Unfortunately, I was arrested and headed into the ghetto in Kielce. There, I stayed in terrible conditions. Diseases, the treatment was inhumane, and still I survived. My mother was deported from the ghetto to Auschwitz-Birkenau and then to Germany. There she had to work very hard indeed. We did survive the war, but unfortunately many of my loved ones did not. They were brutally murdered in various camps. In ghettos, in the forests, we did survive, even though every single day we faced death and inhuman suffering. Every day we fought for our survival. Every night was full of fear, full of uncertainty. 80 years old, I stand with you as a witness to give my testimony of those events. The history of my family is full of suffering that we experienced back then. But it is also the history of the Roma who survived the hell of the war. It's a story of many people who are no longer with us. This anniversary is an anniversary, an opportunity to reflect and to remember. We must remember those who perished, those who were persecuted. It's our moral duty to pass on that memory, to hold this memory and pass it on to future generations. But we need to make an effort. You need to make an effort. You need to work on yourselves. Only thus can you fight biases, stereotypes, and exclusion. You need to learn. You need to study. And you need to be role models and show that you are true, full citizens of your nations. Demand equal treatment. Demand that your rights are respected and react to any signs of anti-Gypsyism, of racism. You, young people, fight for your rights so that you don't have to go through all that we had to go through. Thank you.
Bister,
Şavedi atarsa sasline
na Bister,
Gesa Bisterde Kalifeane Romani asfate na Bistre
Lungo no dromenza ciururi pira
na Bister
Caucalo mormento ludятова
na Bister
Besihasi pakivna naile
na Bister
Amen sate
na Bistre Канакавело краю чижана И надежда дела на Техасарах на Бистрах Карик ты пира дела кайси муроке На Бистер амин дар на Бистер
This was Na Bister, performed by Adrian Gaspar, who played the piano, and the youth choir. It is now my pleasure to invite Małgorzata Kidawa-Błońska, who is the Speaker of the Polish Senate, the upper chamber of the Polish Parliament.
Szanowni Państwo, bardzo trudno.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is so very difficult to speak after the testimony offered by the survivors. Dear honored survivors, witnesses of the Holocaust, excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Today we meet here to commemorate the memory of more than 500,000 of Roma and Sinti who fell victims of genocide ideology of the German Nazis during the period of the Second World War. It was 80 years ago exactly, on the night of August 2nd, 1944, that thousands of women, children and men were hauled here into the gas chambers and murdered. This site of the so-called Gypsy family camp has become the largest cemetery for the Roma and Sinti in Europe and perhaps even in the world. What did it really mean, the Gypsy family camp? It was cynically used by the criminals who created this hell on earth, and we know it from the testimony of the survivors. So Auschwitz-Birkenau inmate, born in 1935 in Hamburg, Elsa Balke, survived her time here thanks to the care extended by another Romani woman, Wanda Fischer. And here she saw things that no child, no human being should ever see. She experienced suffering that no one should ever have to go through. As a child, she saw crimes committed against inmates, human bodies hung on wires. And when asked about the greatest gift, the biggest favor she ever received from her guardian, from her caretaker, she simply answered, when the Germans led people to be executed, Wanda would put her hand on my eyes so I would never see it, so I would never watch it. Sinti and Roma were persecuted by the Nazis in Germany and across all occupied European countries since the very beginning of the war, but even before then, when this lunatic race theory of the Nazis was conceived. Throughout the war, 80% of Sinti and Roma living in Germany were murdered. Almost all of the Roma living in the Protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia, and more than 1/3 of all the Roma living in Poland. Thousands of Roma living in Poland, Belarus, Ukraine and Russia never made it to Auschwitz, not even that, because they were murdered in mass executions carried out by the German police, Wehrmacht and SS units. It was here in Auschwitz that the very ultimate act of this tragedy was to take place. It was here that the entire nation was supposed to be murdered, its culture annihilated, and the memory of Roma and Sinti was supposed to be gone forever. But the Nazis never fulfilled their criminal plan. They never got to this. And the demonstration proof of their defeat is actually your presence here, the presence of Roma and Sinti survivors of the Holocaust, presence of the children and grandchildren, the presence of successive Roma generations who proudly cultivate this beautiful tradition and culture of the European Roma. So, Nazis wanted to seize and annihilate the entire nation of eternal wanderers, but you continue your proud journey through the history of Europe and the world. The question we must ask ourselves on this day is not just the question whether we remember the tragedy of the European Roma and whether we remember what caused it. Well, to this question here, we all know the answer, but there is a far more important question. Are we able, through our remembrance, to prevent such a tragedy of ever happening again? Now, it is not that easy to answer the second question, especially today, when there is war in Europe again. Well, 80 years ago, the Nazis were murdering Jews and Roma, and there are children and civilians being killed in Ukraine as we speak. So if some 80 years ago the German Nazis were able to attempt to exterminate entire nations in Europe, and they were almost successful in carrying out this lunatic plan, it was only made possible because of the fact that we lacked the instinct of solidarity. We were not able to immediately respond to this internationally imposed aggression, to violence and violation of human rights. Too many people in too many countries were telling themselves then for too long that the crimes of the National Socialists were not their concern, they would survive, so there's no need to worry about anybody else. But the history of the Second World War clearly demonstrates that these expectations and hopes were delusional. And this very thinking, some 80 years ago, allowed Hitler to conquer almost all of Europe and to murder the entire population of Roma and Sinti, Jewish people, whoever was there on the road. So this kind of thinking, lack of solidarity in the democratic world, is what the new tyrants are counting on today as they start wars and kill people. So if we really remember the Holocaust, our response in defending freedom must be unyielding. If our remembrance is to be of any use at all, we must now show hands-on solidarity with all the nations that are victims of war, hatred, or ideology of the powerful madness. After what happened in Auschwitz, we came to believe in Europe that the slogan "Never Again" will indeed become a guideline for all the countries and all the politicians. But today, after Russia's aggression against Ukraine, we know that nothing is granted once and for all. Nothing can be taken as a given. Neither peace, nor democracy, nor trust, and not even memory. This is some bitter knowledge. But this is also knowledge that forces us to act. I believe that this time, the solidarity of the free world towards nations that fall victim to aggression will not be too late, and that it will allow us to avoid this tragedy of happening again, the tragedy that befell the Roma and Sinti people exactly 80 years ago. It is their story and their history that tell us that the defense of freedom and peace is an eternal journey. Thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much.
From the President of the German Bundestag, Ms. Bärbel.
Sehr geehrte Frau Klasing, sehr geehrter Herr Rumanowski, Ihre Reden haben mich wirklich tief bewegt. Deutschland hat Ihnen und Ihren Familien furchtbares Leid angetan.
Yeah, I've been deeply moved by your speeches. Germany inflicted terrible suffering on you and your loved ones, your families. You were forced to go through hell, and I'm truly grateful for the fact that you are here today. Mr. Rose, you have asked me to speak today. Here in Auschwitz, this place is so closely linked to the suffering of your family and with the suffering of the Sinti and Roma from all across Europe. You have invited me to this Memorial Day. It is an expression of great trust, and it means a lot to me. Yesterday, I was given a tour. I saw this former camp, and I'm pained to see. I'm ashamed to see what crimes Germans committed here. Mr. Kwiatkowski, Ms. Kidawa-Błońska, Mr. Rousopoulos, Mr. Schwezik, Ms. Roth, Mr. Dayan, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, dear survivors, are there any words? Can we find words to describe the suffering that is linked to this place? The Italian Roma, Santino Spinelli, managed to find words to describe the unspeakable. His poem, Auschwitz, is a part of this memorial to the Sinti and Roma victims of National Socialism. This memorial can be seen from the German Bundestag, and I quote here: "Pallid face, dead eyes, cold lips, silence, a broken heart, without breath, without words, no tears." Auschwitz symbolizes the greatest crime ever committed by humans against other humans. It is synonymous with the civilizational break that was unleashed by Germany. It symbolizes the will to annihilate European Jewry and this genocide of the Sinti and Roma. Here in Auschwitz, the racial fanaticism of the Nazis culminated in the savage effort to wipe up all human lives. The intention was to eradicate all Jews, all Sinti, all Roma. They were all supposed to be murdered. Ladies and gentlemen, it is here that the camp for Sinti and Roma stood. 80 years ago, on the day, all of the camp's inmates were murdered. In a single night, the Nazis forced up to 4,300 children, women and men into gas chambers, and yet Sinti and Roma fought back. Eyewitnesses from other groups of inmates described intense struggle, fights. Women and men resisted fiercely when they were being dragged out of their barracks. Cries could be heard long into the night. Whilst the Sinti and Roma fighting for their lives in Auschwitz, the Polish Home Army was resisting in Warsaw. Let us remember that too. Let us remember that we are holding this meeting against the backdrop of the 80th anniversary of the Warsaw Uprising. Poles from all sections of society resisted the German regime of occupation, and they fought every day in the Polish underground state. Auschwitz is closely linked with the German War of Annihilation, which began with the invasion of Poland. Tens of thousands of Poles were killed here. along with thousands of POWs from other European countries. People were murdered and kept prisoners. People who did not fit into the Nazi vision of the world, whether because of their beliefs or religion, their life or their sexuality. Ladies and gentlemen, never before has a president of the Bundestag visited Auschwitz. Today, I speak to you as a representative of the parliament, which symbolizes Germany's new democratic beginning. The end of National Socialism was not a 0 hour, even though the Germans wanted to believe it at the time, and indeed many still do. Racism did not simply disappear from people's minds overnight. The suffering of the Sinti and Roma was not recognized after the war. Courts would refuse compensation to the survivors. Even worse, they blamed the victims for them being persecuted. The genocide against the Sinti and Roma was basically covered in silence. It was being denied, and hardly any perpetrators were held accountable. Quite the opposite, the survivors would meet their own persecutors when they went to state agencies or to authorities. The discrimination continued. Democracy was set up, but the injustice continued. It is the Sinti and Roma survivors, their children, their grandchildren, took it up on themselves to continue the fight. They broke the silence and they confronted Germany with its crimes. They insisted on equal treatment. Mr. Rose, you and your family have been an important part of the Sinti and Roma civil rights movements. You have done a great service to democracy and the culture of remembrance in Germany. Today, the suffering of the Sinti and Roma has a firm place in Germany's public remembrance efforts. At the very heart of Berlin, you can see a monument that recalls, that symbolizes the genocide. It receives many visitors every day. There's also this commemoration effort. Zoniewicz in 2011 spoke to us, the deputies, at the ceremony of remembrance for the victims of National Socialism, and I was deeply moved by that speech. Ladies and gentlemen, the Federal Republic of Germany recognizes its historical responsibility, but this also means that we are committed to resolutely combat anti-Gypsyism. Last year, the German Bundestag called on the federal government to establish a commission to address the injustice committed against Sinti and Roma. This action enjoyed a broad parliamentary majority. This was a strong signal. It showed our determination. Even now, many people are not aware of certain things. Still, there is discrimination. Sinti and Roma are being discriminated against. Landlords and landladies discriminate against them as prospective tenants. Companies discriminate against them as prospective employees. It cannot be accepted. The state also sometimes fails to live up to its historical responsibility. Even teachers often do not believe that Roma children will perform well at school. What is needed is a change of mindset, and it is needed in many areas of our lives. No more seeking scapegoats, no more demeaning, no more exclusion. What we need is respect. What we need is acceptance. Democracy safeguards the protection of minorities. Democracy thrives when all citizens enjoy the same rights. No ifs, no buts. Ladies and gentlemen, many millions of Germans follow Hitler. Some of them were enthusiastic supporters. The majority, more or less willingly, did the very same. How could they have looked the other way when their neighbors were being driven from their homes and deported? How could have they become so enthused by anti-Semitism, anti-Gypsyism, racism? How could Auschwitz have happened? These questions is relevant today. Even today, there are certain forces that try to divide our societies, divide us into us and them. These are the forces that incite hatred against Sinti and Roma, against Jews, hatred of all those who are or are claimed to be different. Today, we want to fight evil at a very early stage, but first we need to understand what happens. Sometimes people long for simple solutions. It's about contempt for democracy. People believe that the exclusion of others will not affect us personally. We try not to remember about it, but we must never forget it was humans who enabled this most terrible evil, allowed it. This should shake us to the very core. It should be a warning and an admonition to the entire world.
Thank you very much. May I now request an address from the President of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, Dr. Theodoros Rousopoulos.
The human monster who went by the name of Josef Mengele and who came in this very place a few decades ago did experiments on humans that included putting people in pressure chambers, testing drugs on them, freezing them, attempting to change the color of their eyes by injecting chemicals into the children's eyes, and various amputations and other brutal surgeries. Individuals who managed to survive Mengele's horrific experiments were almost always murdered and dismembered shortly afterwards. The monster seemed particularly eager to work with Roma children. He would bring them sweets and toys, and personally take them to the gas chamber. He liked to be called Uncle Mengele. He was a doctor, and what an irony. An ancient Greek philosopher and father of medicine, Hippocrates, said that the doctors should serve the people, should save lives, should heal wounds. He didn't do anything of that. Ver Alexander was a Jewish inmate at Auschwitz and was assigned to take care of 50 Roma twin children. I read from a text preserved in the American Holocaust Memorial Museum words spoken by Vera Alexander. I quote, "I remember a pair of twins in particular, Guido and Ina, aged about 4 years. One day, Mengele took them away. When they returned, they were in a terrible state. They were sewn together, back to back, like a conjoined twins. Their wounds were infected and losing pus. They were screaming day and night. Then their parents, I remember the mother's name was Stella, managed to find some morphine and killed the children to end their pain. The Roma, who were forcibly brought to this place where we are today, did not easily surrender their freedom and rights. In some cases, they tried to resist extermination by the Nazis. In May 1944, at Auschwitz, SS guards attempted to clear the Roma family camp and met with unexpected resistance. When ordered to leave, they refused. They armed themselves with improvised weapons, iron pipes, shovels, and other work tools. The SS chose not to confront the Roma directly and left for several months. After transferring those who were eligible for forced labor to Auschwitz and other concentration camps, the SS moved against the remaining prisoners on August the 2nd, 80 years like today. The SS killed almost all the remaining prisoners, 4,300 people. Most of them were sick, old men, children, women, and they killed them in the gas chamber at Birkenau. At least 19,000 of the 23,000 Roma sent to Auschwitz perished here. Honorable survivors, distinguished guests, sometimes words are not enough, so I have chosen to begin my speech by bringing to your mind images that took place at this place of martyrdom. The protagonists in these images are those who suffered. They are at the same time the protagonists of history, their names written in gold letters. They are the protagonists in the memory of all democratically minded citizens. As President of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, I represent the organization that was founded immediately after the odious war. This year marks the 75th anniversary of the Council of Europe, the guardian of democracy, the guardian of rule of law, the guardian of human rights. All this was abolished not only in the martyr camp of Auschwitz, but in all the countries that were under the boot of the Nazis. Memory, dear participants, is the mother of humanity. Without memory, people tend to make the same mistakes. Without memory, there is no past many believe. I will tell you that without memory, there is no future. So if we want to give the next generations to come hope and meaning in their lives, we have to pass on memory. As it is in science, as it is in a family, as it is in the whole society, memory, that is the experience and knowledge that it accumulates in humanity. And this is what comes to open new path for us. It comes to remind us of the principles for which it is worth fighting in life. We have both the duty and obligation to stand up to hatred. This memory is a fundamental cement of our collective European consciousness and the foundation of our will to live together equally. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And may I now request an address from the chairman of Yad Vashem, the World Holocaust Remembrance Center, Mr. Dani Dayan.
Holocaust survivors, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. December 5, 1941. Today, the first group of Roma arrived in the ghetto. They arrived in locked wagons. Almost all the men were handcuffed. The women carried their children on their shoulders, along with some laundry and bedding. Almost all the women were dressed in light clothes. The children were without shoes. Let me remind you, it was December, not August. The picture is impossible for me to describe. I cannot decide whether what I see is actual reality or merely a nightmare. Never before have I witnessed such a terrible scene. This quote is taken from the diary of Shlomo Frank, a Jewish deportee in the Lodz ghetto, originally written in Yiddish. Shlomo Frank was witness that day to the arrival of approximately 5,000 Roma from Austria, who had been deported by Nazi Germany to the Lodz ghetto, which at the time already contained over 200,000 Jews. Within the so-called Jewish ghetto, the Nazi created a separate camp for Sinti and Roma, referred to by the Nazis as the Gypsy Camp. Conditions among the Roma deportees were particularly atrocious, and soon an epidemic of typhus broke out. The death rate was rapid and appalling. Jewish doctors were allowed to assist the sick Roma, knowing that they pay with their lives for that. Soon afterwards, the Nazis began transporting the remaining Roma to their death by gas in Chelmno. In the perpetual hell created by the Nazis and their collaborators throughout occupied Europe, our two people, the Jews and the Roma and Sinti, shared only the murderous racist hatred of their captors, who allowed them then to share nothing else. They were deliberately and manipulatively kept apart, each people destined to its own horrible fate. Sinti and Roma and Jews, we were transported in similar cattle cars. We were murdered in the same gas chambers, here at Birkenau and elsewhere. Our bodies were burned in the same crematoria, and our ashes were dispersed in the same fields. Thus, we, Jews, Sinti and Roma, became eternal partners in the moral battle against evil and in the battle for the remembrance of the innocent victims and their legacy. My participation here today as chairman of Yad Vashem, the World Holocaust Remembrance Center in Jerusalem, can be seen as a milestone on that moral partnership. At this pivotal, a symbolic commemoration, at this horrible but meaningful place, I wish to express, on behalf of the Jewish people, our profound recognition of the catastrophic genocide inflicted upon the Roma and Sinti simultaneously with the Holocaust, and to identify with your eternal grief. We heard here that it took to many countries, to many nations, probably all of them, took them decades to recognize the genocide of the Sinti and Roma. Not to us, not to the Jewish people, because we saw you here. Let me remind you that in the famous Adolf Eichmann trial in Jerusalem in 1961, Article 11 in the indictment was the accusation against Adolf Eichmann of participation in the genocide of what then was referred to as the Gypsies, and the Israeli court convicted Adolf Eichmann of that crime, and that was part of the historic verdict. Currently, both our people are experiencing frightening global phenomena of denial and distortion of the terrible crimes committed against us in the past. Such denial and distortion have already led to hatred, conflict, and violence, and if unchecked, will continue to poison our societies and threaten their existence. My own country has recently discovered, to our utter shock, that destructive forces motivated by genocidal hatred are capable of denying even documented atrocities that were committed only a few months ago. So we do not naively assume that fighting prejudice and ignorance is easy or is simple. We know it's difficult, but we are determined to succeed. As we continue to face hatred, nations committed to morality, justice, and truth must join hands and hearts against racism, against anti-Semitism, against anti-Gypsyism. This requires deep commitment, courage, constant effort, professional skill, and also adequate resources. With this in mind, Yad Vashem has taken and will continue to take a central role within the IHRA, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, in the development and implementation of what is known as the recommendations for teaching and learning about the persecution and genocide of the Roma during the Nazi era. This is one of our ways of helping to share your story, our Roma and Sinti colleagues, your memory with the entire world. I conclude with a biblical exhortation in Hebrew, which encapsulates our shared commitment to the eternal remembrance of what was done here to our peoples 8 decades ago. Zachor velo tishkach. Remember and do not forget.
Thank you very much. Time for a very important message that we have received from Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations.
It is a great honor and a great sadness to mark the Holocaust Memorial Day for Roma and Sinti in this landmark year. 8 years ago, the last surviving Roma and Sinti in Auschwitz-Birkenau were murdered. This was a despicable episode in a despicable history of persecution, systemic mass murder, and outright genocide perpetrated by the Nazis and their collaborators. Their relentless brutality saw up to 500,000 Roma killed, communities devastated, and age-old culture shattered across Europe. For too long, these atrocities were downplayed, diminished, and denied. Today, we honor the memory of all those murdered and deprived of their humanity. We pay tribute to the survivors and promise never to forget. We commend the courage of Roma and Sinti resistance, and we commit to combating hate. The prejudice that fueled the Nazis' terrible crimes did not end with their downfall. It continued, denying justice and distorting history. And it remains today. The sad reality is that Roma people face rampant discrimination in all areas of life and all parts of the world, not least in Europe. Extremist and xenophobic groups are spreading hate speech, scapegoating marginalized communities, and sowing fear and division. We must stand together to fight bigotry whenever and wherever it appears, to protect and promote the human rights of Roma, and to build a world in which all people live in dignity, peace, and freedom. The United Nations is your unwavering ally in that cause. Thank you.
Wysłuchaliśmy utworu Wętrain
Noten Wären has just been performed. How many tears have been shed in fear, but also at various joyful meetings after many years. People were left by themselves and died, but many had this opportunity to meet after many years, and this is what this piece is about. Speaking of meetings, let me thank from the bottom of my heart to all those who have made this meeting possible, to the organizers, various organizations and individuals, artists, interpreters, the security, the volunteers. Now we will move on. Wreaths will be laid at the monument that commemorates the victims. Ladies and gentlemen, we still have in our minds the words that have just been spoken. Now is the time to pay tribute to those that were murdered here. This is an important day, the European Holocaust Memorial Day of Roma and Sinti. We are commemorating it on the 80th anniversary of the day when over 4,000 Roma and Sinti were murdered here. But it is also a day when we are commemorating all of the victims, 500,000 of them. It will be the time when flowers will be laid here. Here, which used to be known as the family camp for the gypsies, it was called back then. Thousands of men, women and children died here. They were the victims of the German Nazis, and they were tortured here, imprisoned here, they were killed here. Adrian and Gaspar will be playing on the piano, accompanied by an ensemble. Please lay your wreaths as efficiently as possible so that the victims can see the whole ceremony. And it is the survivors and the organizers that will be the first ones to lay down the wreaths. Alma Klasing, Mr. Christian Feil, Bolesław Rumanowski, Mr. Marian Turski, Mr. Kwiatkowski, Mr. Romani Rosé, and Director Piotr Cywinski will be the first ones to lay down the wreaths. The wreaths are already there at the monument, so may I ask you to approach your respective wreaths and pay tribute to those who died here.
Do złożenia wieńców
May I now kindly ask the representatives of the Parliament to lay the wreaths on behalf of the upper chamber of the Polish Parliament. The Speaker of the Polish Senate will be laid by Małgorzata Kidawa-Błońska.
The wreaths from the German Parliament and government will be laid by Ms. Bärbel, President of the German Bundestag, laying the wreath as the representative of the Federal Republic of Germany, Ms. Manuela Schwesig, President of the Bundesrat of Germany, and Ms. Claudia Roth, Minister of State for Culture and the Media in the Federal Government of Germany. The wreaths from the international and European institutions will be laid by Dr. Theodoros Rousopoulos, President of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, pani Dorota Niedziela, wicemarszałek Sejmu Rzeczypospolitej Polskiej,
Ms. Niedziela,
Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives of the Parliamentary Assembly of Bosnia and Herzegovina, Dr. Žygismantas Paviljonis, Deputy Speaker of the Lithuanian Seimas and representative of the Lithuanian Presidency of the Committee of Ministers of the Council of Europe, Mr. Dani Dayan, Chairman of the Yad Vashem, the World Holocaust Remembrance Center, the Right Honourable Lord Eric Pickles, Chair of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, UK Presidency, and Ms. Tea Jaleshvili, First Deputy Director of the OSCE Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights. I to, proszę Państwa, jest ten moment, w którym
This is the moment when the official state delegations are leaving us. However, we remain to remember those that have perished and to offer the remaining wreaths in the following order. May I kindly ask Dardo Volde Ensemble to perform Lied for Mensagen, which is the song of the story. In shock and sadness and unbelieving ear, we heard the story of persecutions of the elderly of our nation.
Delegacje oficjalne bardzo prosimy o...
May I kindly ask the official delegations to head for the buses.
Proszę Państwa, prosimy pozostać na miejscach.
Please stay in your seats as the ceremony continues. More wreaths are yet to be laid.
Continues, we will be placing more of the wreaths. There are still many to come. This is not the end of the ceremony. This is only when the official delegations are leaving. Let's please stay seated. Wieńce w imieniu rządu oraz urzędów centralnych Rzeczypospolitej Polskiej.
Of the government, the central offices of the Bank of Poland will be laid by Mr. Tomasz Szymański, the Secretary of State, the Ministry of Internal Affairs and Administration, Mr. Władysław Bartoszewski, the Secretary of State at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, as well as Professor Marcin Wiącek, the Polish ombudsman. On behalf of the Prime Minister, Mr. Donald Tusk, a late will be laid by the governor.
Wieńce w imieniu współorganizatorów.
On behalf of the co-organizers, the wreaths will be presented by Bolesław Kwiatkowski, who is the head of the Center of Roma History and Culture in Oświęcim, oraz Dikhrena Bister, inicjatywa młodzieżowa w imieniu Międzynarodowej Sieci Młodych Romów, Iwona Gibas from the Małopolska region.
Do złożenia wieńców zapraszam ambasadorów.
May I now ask the ambassadors accredited to the Republic of Poland to lay the flowers? Andrzej Stadler, who is the ambassador of Austria in Warsaw, Jakob Liwner, who is the ambassador of Israel to Poland, Rauf Altenkast, the ambassador of the Turkish Republic in Warsaw, and Anna Ugla, who is the deputy head of mission within the Swedish embassy in Poland.
Zapraszam przedstawicieli rządów narodowych.
May I invite the national governmental representatives of Roma and Sinti for Roma and Sinti.
A representative of Dr. Mehmet Daimagula, Federal Commissioner Against Anti-Gypsyism and for the Life of Sinti and Roma in Germany. A representative of Dr. Robert Klinke, Special Representative of the German Federal Foreign Office for Relations with Jewish Organizations, issues relating to anti-Semitism, international Sinti and Roma affairs, and Holocaust remembrance. Ms. Ferda Ataman, German Independent Federal Commissioner for Anti-Discrimination, pana Jana Łazickiego, pełnomocnika ministra spraw zagranicznych do spraw kontaktów z diasporą żydowską, Commissioner for Romani Minority Affairs of the Czech Republic, Mr. Süleyman Elshani, Deputy Minister for Culture, Republic of Kosovo, Ms. Doreen Denstedt, Thuringian Commissioner Against Anti-Gypsyism, Representative of European Commission, Representative of the OSCE ODIHR Contact Point for Roma and Sinti Issues, Representative of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights. May I invite now representatives of the Hellenic Parliament, the Belgian House of Representatives, and representatives of churches and denominations, among them Pan Artur Hoffman, prezes Stowarzyszenia.
Mr. Artur Hoffman from the Polish Jewish Social Association, Włodzimierz Kat, the head of the Jewish community in Katowice,
and members of the Conference of the German Bishops, the Protestant Church in Germany, represented among others by MP Kerstin Grieser. Zapraszam naszych gospodarzy, władze lokalne.
May I kindly invite our hosts and the local authorities, the head of the Auschwitz Council, the mayor of the city of Auschwitz, Mrs. Marshal, who is the deputy void of the Auschwitz municipality. May I also kindly invite the representatives of the Silesian region, Mr. Adam Padera.
May I now invite representatives of the Hungarian Embassy and Mr. Matteo Oliari, Director of the Italian Culture Institute in Kraków. So? Zapraszam przedstawicieli miejsc i instytucji pamięci,
the representatives of memorials and various institutions, including Polygon. It is represented by the International Center for Youth Meetings in Oświęcim, which is represented by Joanna Klęcz-Dodat, the International Center for Dialogue.
Representative of the Foundation Remembrance, Responsibility and Future Germany, representative of the Living History Forum Sweden, representative of the AMCHA Deutschland e.V. Zapraszam przedstawicieli społeczeństwa.
May I ask the representatives of the civic society from all over Europe,
Representatives of Romani Glinda, Sweden, representatives of Civic Union of Young Roma from Romania, representatives of the Zentralrat der Jenischen, and Mr. Romeo Franz, Secretary General of the German Federal Association of Sinti and Roma. Szanowni Państwo, z uwagi na
Ladies and gentlemen, as there are numerous flowers and wreaths waiting to be laid, and due to some changes, we will now be asking all the people who want to lay flags to do so now. So we will be starting with AMCHA organization.
Menda Jekyll, the Czech Embassy, the Federal Criminal Office of Germany, Uwaga do tych z Państwa, którzy opuszczają miejsce.
Those of you who want to leave here,
The headsets are to the place from which you collected it. Uwaga do wszystkich osób opuszczających miejsce ceremonii. Prosimy o zwrot słuchawek do tłumaczenia symultanicznego w miejscu, z którego Państwo je pobrali. The Museum of Romani Culture, Czech Republic. Dikena Bister Arka from Ukraine. The Embassy of Norway. French Consulate General in Krakow and the French Institute. The United Kingdom and the Scottish Government. What about those unclaimed ones? Firena Mensa International Network. Jewish Community Center, Krakow. International Romani Union. Fundacja Sinti Art. Harangus Association. Business and Professional Women. Business and Professional Women of Germany. Civic Union of Young Roma from Romania. Romedia Foundation. Romano Instituto. Sarosaras Petum. Zentralrat der Janischen. Roma Foundation Europe, Roma Education Fund, READY, and other associated organizations. And the European Roma Institute for Arts and Culture. The Roma self-government from Hungary. Romea student organization from the Czech Republic. Romano Kiev from Ukraine, the Roma Theatre from the city of Kiev, Ukraine, Romani Glinda, Sweden, Szanowni Państwo, i tak właśnie minorowo kończy się dzisiejsza uroczystość. Uroczystość, która wspomina, że pewnego dnia
And this is the end of this commemoration. We are trying to remember the fact that at a certain point 3,000 Roma lived here. By the end of the night, none was left alive. This is the end of this ceremony. Please leave for the gate, leave the headsets in your seats or wherever you took them from. See you at 7 at Papusha's harps.
When the day started with 3,400 people in this section of the camp, and when the night came, there were none. Let's leave now this place, let's proceed towards the gate, and on your way, please leave the headsets where you collected them from. And I hope to see you at 7 p.m. at the Harps of Papusha concert. Thank you very much.